We'll go ahead and get started. I will now call to order the meeting of the Omaha Planning Board. The Planning Board members that are here today are David Rosacker, Michael Pate, Jeff Moore, Sidney Franklin, Chris Carnes, the Vice Chair, and I am Greg Rosenbaum, Chairman. Members of the city staff that are in attendance today are Dave Fanslaw, Planning Director, Eric England, Assistant Planning Director, Mike Carter, Acting Current Planning Manager, Robert LaRocco, Planning Board Administrator, Jennifer Taylor of the City Law Department, and Lisa Agans, our Recording Secretary. Our rules of procedure are as follows. Notice of this hearing has been published. Copies of today's agenda are located on the table in front of us. You're welcome to come down and pick one up. The cases on the consent agenda will be heard first. Consent cases are perceived by the planning board to be non-controversial, have already been heard or been recommended for layover, and therefore will be read and voted on without the opportunity for your testimony. If you wish to testify, you may remove the case from the consent agenda. When each consent case is read, I will ask if anyone wants the case removed. If you do, please stand up and say so, and the case will be removed. This case will then be heard in the order in which it appears on the regular agenda after we go through the consent cases. When the case is heard, you will have the opportunity to come to the podium, clearly state your name and address, and give your testimony at that time. When hearing cases on the regular agenda, the board will first hear from the applicant. After the applicant states their case, we will hear from the proponents, and then we will hear from the opponents. After both sides are heard, the public hearing will be closed and no additional testimony will be permitted unless a board member requests additional information. When at the podium, please clearly state your name, address, and whom you are representing for the record. Your testimony is very important to us. In the interest of time and courtesy to others, please be short and to the point. We will try to limit each case to 10 minutes. Those directly involved in the case, please speak first. We request that large groups select a spokesperson to represent that group, therefore eliminating repetitive testimony. When giving testimony, please provide new information and try not to repeat what has been previously said. We do ask that all speakers and others be treated with courtesy and with respect. In that regard, please remain silent while seated, and please turn off your cell phones. Our decision to approve, deny, or continue a case made here today will be forwarded to the City Council for another public hearing and final disposition by the City Council. Conditional use permits are an exception to this rule. The board's decision made here today on conditional use permits are final and not forwarded to the City Council. Lastly, upon the advice of the Law Department, all communications to board members from attorneys or other interested parties should be transmitted through the Planning Department so that they are made a part of the public record. The department will then transmit all that information to the board as well as to the rest of the public. Rezoning matters are an exception to this rule, and we have a current copy of the Nebraska Open Meetings Act can be found in a white binder on the east wall of this room. Before I get started with the consent cases, we want to take some time and recognize and thank Chris Carnes, who is attending her final planning board meeting today. Her 5-year term has expired, and Chris has decided not to move on with the second term. She's been my vice chair ever since I've been chairman. Professionally, I just want to say that I find Chris a very capable, very prepared person when she comes to these meetings. She's smart, she's knowledgeable, and she's extremely fair. That fairness means a lot to Chris. I wish she would stay on the board, but I realize she's got other commitments, other things to do. She's on the District 66 school board. She's taking over for Dave at the Airport Authority. But selfishly, I wish she would stay on the board. The best thing I can say about Chris Carnes is she's a good person. And I will miss her deeply. I know some of the other colleagues on the board would like to express some thoughts or comments, and go ahead.
Just add the same comments that Greg mentioned, that it's been a real pleasure working with you. I enjoy your perspective. You always bring a lot of good insight to our deliberations, and it's a pleasure having you here, and you will be missed.
Yeah, Chris, known you for a few years. I echo everything that's been said. The one thing that was said that I totally agree with is you're a good person, very good person. And how you handle yourself at these meetings is so professional. And the thing that you really, the real value, I think, is several values that you add to these meetings, but you're very pragmatic. You're very logical in the way you analyze these things, which is important. It's been important for the community. And I really, really appreciate your insight, because it's helped me quite a bit to understand what's going on here, and I really appreciate that. I'm sure our paths will continue to cross from time to time on the school board, particular issues and things like that. Wish you nothing but the best for you and your family. I know you're going through a lot right now, and I wish nothing but the best for you going forward. And please know that we're all here for you if you ever need us, but I really appreciate getting to know you, and we'll continue to be friends with you for a long time. So thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Chris, thanks so much for serving the city of Omaha. You've done so in such a professional manner, and I've learned so much from you. I started about a year after you, and I just always would watch how you operated on the planning board, and have learned so much from you. You don't even know it, and wish you nothing but the best. Thank you so much.
Chris, I'll also echo what I've heard. I know we're just getting to know each other, but you will be missed, and I wish you nothing but the best.
I was going to say a little more, but upstairs, Chris said, if anybody makes me cry, she said, I'll take it out on you. So, Dave Fanslau.
Sure, yeah, and since she's right next to you, smart move, Greg.
Yeah.
So, Chris, I'm not sure where to start, but thanks for your service on this. You've heard a lot of good things, and obviously people hold you in high regard. Well deserved, right? So thank you for your 5 years of service on this board. Valuable member to the board. Just like Greg said, you've been his vice president ever since he's been president of the board. So very valuable member of the board. I want everybody in the public to know that. You were always engaged in every case that we talked about. And you've never asked a question that wasn't worth asking. Whenever Chris asked a question, I always felt like she wanted an answer, and she knew the answer she wanted to hear, either at the board, and so everybody else knows, whenever she called me on the phone leading up to a planning board, or when a case came, or when even a question came about something else, Chris would call me often. Always good questions, so we appreciated that. I always felt that you cared about everybody, every person who stood here, whether it be, I'll call them our frequent flyers, the people we see month after month at planning board and city council meetings, or that person who shows up at this podium one time in their life. You treated everybody with respect. You were always thoughtful. I could always tell that you were listening to what they had to say, analyzing what they had to say, and always making the best decision that you could. People have said this already. They've stole my thunder. You were always fair, well-spoken, and prepared for every meeting. I can tell when board members show up for pre-meetings, if they've opened their packet, if they've read things. You surely are one of those board members who put the time and effort into leading up to this meeting, not just showing up at the meeting, showing up at the pre-meeting and asking questions that you probably should already know, but it was clear to me that you always came prepared to those pre-meetings. And as we joked upstairs a little while ago, sometimes too prepared because, Lisa has an extra job to do now to take minutes at those pre-meetings, and we no longer go on our tours, so thank you for that. That's okay. You always treated everybody with respect. You held staff to a higher standard, too. My staff does an incredible job on this board, preparing all the materials for you all and for the public to take a look at and to analyze the cases. But I think you made your board members better board members, and you surely made staff held us to a high standard, which ultimately serves our community in a better way. So thank you for that. This is your last meeting, obviously, but I think you'll be around for a while. Hopefully, we'll see you at other events and on other occasions. But I hope you take a chance to reflect on your last 5 years on the board. You don't have to drive very far in this city to see your handprints and fingerprints all over projects. The strides we've made the last 5 years. I was going to put some stats together on how many cases and but I didn't have time for that, so sorry about that. But you'll be able to drive, or you can drive around town now. Your presence on this board we've felt for decades, and you should be proud of that. I will miss seeing you on a regular basis. I hope our paths cross more often than I think they will, but hopefully we'll see each other. We'll stay in touch. Lastly, I'd like to thank you for your service as a board member, but on a personal level, for your friendship. So thank you, Chris.
Chris, did you want to say something first?
Yeah, Eric, are you?
Oh, okay.
Go ahead.
No, I'll let Dave, speak on behalf of the department, but I just want to thank you, and after you say a few words, we do have a plaque to give you.
Thank you. I just want to say thank you to everyone on the board and the people who served previously while I've been on the board too. My interest in this board initiated several years ago because someone told me, if you're interested in learning more about how the city of Omaha works, a great board to be on would be the planning board. And they were exactly right. You learn about multiple departments, not just the planning department. But you do get to see how everybody works together. And I have to say, the planning department in the city of Omaha is really unparalleled. I mean, they are consummate professionals, hard workers. They know their stuff. Talk about trying to be fair and consistent. It's been very impressive to get to know the folks that work here and see how the city of Omaha's work gets done. And I've been very proud to be part of that. It's been a great learning experience for me personally and professionally. This isn't my area of expertise, and so I wish every citizen in Omaha could sit on this board and learn more about the city and planning rules particularly. The individuals who serve on this board, everything you've said about me, I could say back to you. Conscientious, fair-minded, hardworking, just really good people. And I know sometimes people think that we, have ulterior motives, or that we aren't looking at things from all perspectives. And I can assure you that that is not the case. Everyone here puts fairness and respect for the citizens of Omaha as a priority when we look at all these cases. And it's been a true pleasure to be part of that. And I am grateful to the city for allowing me to have this position for 5 years, and I'll miss it, and I'll miss all of you personally, and thank you for your friendship.
We have something to give you if everybody's comfortable. I think it'd be a good idea to have everybody have a picture with Chris. We have a plaque for you that talks about your service, that get framed, that we give all our retiring planning board members. So I'd like to present that to you now.
Okay.
And if everybody's comfortable, I think it'd be a great idea to get a
Yeah.
picture. All of you out here.
Do we need our mask on, or? Chris, do you want us with mask?
I have one on, so whatever you want to do.
Okay.
Yeah. Done that before, right? Yeah.
Okay, I'm going to go ahead and get started with the cases that are on for consent. Again, just to remind you, if there's a case on consent, if you want it taken off, just please stand up and say so, and then it'll be heard in the order of which it is on the agenda. Agenda item number 6, case C10-20-245, C12-20-246, applicant Steve Hannell. It is on for layover. Request preliminary and final plat approval of Andreessen Meadows Replat 2, a minor plat outside city limits with rezoning from DR to R4. Location 2218 North 179th Street. This is on for layover. Does anyone want this removed? You do, sir?
Yes, sir.
Okay. It will be removed.
Not yet.
Agenda item number 7, case C12-20-247. Applicant Troy Windells for Custom Concrete Design, Inc. It is on for approval. Request preliminary and final plat approval of Horbach 2nd Edition Replat 5, a minor plat inside city limits. Location 1804 Paul Street. Does anyone wish to have this removed? Okay, seeing none. Agenda item number 8, case C10-20-248, C12-20-249. Applicant Smart Development Indian Trails LLC. It is on for approval. Request preliminary plat approval of Indian Trails, a subdivision outside city limits with rezoning from AG to DR and R4. Location northeast of 192nd Street and George Miller Parkway. Does anyone wish to have this removed? Seeing none, agenda item number 10, case C12-20-254. Applicant 192nd Maple LLC. It is on for approval. Request preliminary and final plat approval of Antler View Replat 4, a minor plat outside city limits. Property is located within an MCC, Major Commercial Corridor Overlay District. Location southwest of Big Elk Parkway and West Maple Road. Does anyone wish to have this removed? Seeing none, agenda item number 11, case C10-20-237. Applicant Daniel Tucker. It is on for approval. Request rezoning from R435 and R6 to R5 and R6. Location northeast of Cedar Street and South 55th Avenue. Does anyone wish to have this removed? Seeing none, I'll move on. Agenda item number 12, case C10-20-255. Applicant Jessica Rowell. It is on for approval. Request rezoning from GI to R5. Location 4117 Charles Street. Does anyone wish to have this removed? Seeing none, agenda item number 13, case C10-20-256. Applicant Lamprey Nearson. It is on for layover. Request rezoning from R4 to DR. Location east of 218th and Karen Streets. Does anyone wish to have this removed? Seeing none, agenda item number 14, case C10-20-257. Applicant 72nd Street Car Wash Real Estate LLC. It is on for approval. Request rezoning from GC to CC. Property is located within an ACI 2 area of civic importance overlay district. Location southeast of 72nd and Farnham Street. Does anyone wish to have this removed? Seeing none. Agenda item number 15, case C10-3-203. Applicant Jim Purchell, on for approval, request. Approval of a major amendment to a mixed-use development agreement for Blondo 108 Business Park. Location, 10909 Burdette Street. Does anyone wish to have this removed? Seeing none. Agenda item number 16, case C10-7-281. Applicant Andy Golden. It is on for approval. Request approval of a major amendment to the mixed-use development agreement for Pacific Springs Place. Location 17909 Barker Court. Does anyone wish to have this removed? Seeing none. Moving on, agenda item number 17, case C8-20-259. Applicant Brad Louth. I hope I said that correctly. It is on for layover. Request approval of a special use permit to allow construction sales and service in the CC district pending. Property is located within the flood fringe overlay district. Location northwest of Rose Blumpkin Drive and Harney Street. Does anyone wish to have this removed? Seeing none. Agenda item number 18, case C7-20-260. Applicant Susan Bailey. It is on for approval. Request approval of a conditional use permit to allow pet services in the GI district. The property is located within an ACI 2 area of civic importance overlay district, and portions of the property are located within the flood fringe overlay district. Location 960 South 72nd Street. Does anyone wish to have this one removed? Seeing none, I'll take a motion from the board for those consent items that are on for approval.
I'll move for approval of consent items 7, 8, 10, 11, 12, 14, 15, 16, and 18.
I think,
Did I miss one?
nope, you're right.
Okay.
6 was taken off. Yep, 6 was taken off. Okay. Do we have a motion and a second? Second. Lisa, will you please record the vote?
Carnes? Yes. Rosacker?
Yes.
Pate?
Yes.
Moore?
Yes.
Franklin? Yes. Mr. Chair?
Yes.
Motion approved.
Do we have a motion for the consent items for layover?
Move for layover agenda items 13 and 17.
Do we have a second? We have a motion and a second. Lisa, will you record the vote?
Rosacker?
Yes.
Pate?
Yes.
Moore?
Yes.
Franklin? Carnes?
Yes.
Mr. Chair?
Yes.
Motion approved.
Okay, those consent cases have been voted on today. No more action, no further action will be taken. If you were here for one of those cases, you are free to stay, you're free to go. And we'll move on with the regular agenda. The first 2 cases are administrative cases only. There will not be any opportunity for public testimony. Agenda item number 1, case C10-20-173, C12-20-174. Applicant HRC Anchorview LLC. Request final plat approval of Anchorview, a subdivision outside city limits with rezoning from AG to DR and R5. Location 17550 Potter Street. Eric.
Yeah, so the preliminary plat was before the planning board on September 2nd and recommended for approval, or approved by city council on October 20th meeting. The final plat is consistent with the approved preliminary plat and creates 132 low-density housing units and 4 outlots. A few small items that'll have to be addressed prior to forwarding to city council regarding a trail connection and grading and sewer issues. Staff recommends approval of the rezoning from AG to DR and R5, approval of the final plat subject to addressing the outstanding issues with the existing grading permit, and submittal of an acceptable final subdivision agreement prior to city council.
Any comments or questions from the board? Do we have a motion?
I move approval of the rezoning from AG to DR and R5 and approval of the final plat, subject to addressing the outstanding issues with the existing grading permit and submittal of an acceptable final subdivision agreement prior to forwarding the request to City Council for final action.
We have a motion and a second. Lisa, will you please record the vote?
Pate,
Yes.
Moore. Franklin. Carnes. Rosacker. Mr. Chair,
Yes.
motion approved.
Agenda item number 2, case C10-20-177, C12-20-178. Applicant, Woodsonia North Streams LLC, request final plat approval of North Streams Replat 1, a subdivision outside city limits with rezoning from DR and R4 to DR and R4. Location, southwest of 202nd and I Streets. Eric.
This preliminary plat was also before the planning board September 2nd and approved by council on October 20th. This is 34.5 acres that would be replatted into 83 single-family residential lots and 6 outlots. There are a few items regarding confirmation of vacated right-of-way and standard language on the plat, as well as confirming that sewer lines are located outside of necessary 3-to-1 plus 20 outlot for a channel. Staff recommends approval of the rezoning from DR and R4 to DR and R4, approval of the final plat subject to the conditions of preliminary plat approval and meeting the 5 conditions in your report prior to City Council.
Any comments or questions from the board? Do we have a motion?
Motion for the approval of rezoning from DR and R4 to DR and R4. Approval of the final plat, subject to the conditions of the preliminary plat approval and meeting the 5 conditions prior to forwarding to the request of the City Council.
We have a motion and a second. Lisa, will you please record the vote?
Moore.
Yes.
Franklin. Carnes. Rosacker. Pate,
Yes.
Mr. Chair,
Yes.
motion approved.
And we'll move on to the public hearing part of the meeting. Agenda item number 3, case C3-20-225. Applicant, Planning Department, on behalf of the City of Omaha, request approval of the Elkhorn Landing TIF redevelopment project plan. This was laid over from our November meeting. Location, 20603 and 20605 Elkhorn Drive. And Don, you're presenting.
Yes, this afternoon, Don Seaton, Omaha City Planning Department, on behalf of the project. This project is in Elkhorn, out west. It's right next to a previous TIF project that we had approved. The site is comprised of 2 parcels. It's these parcels here along Elkhorn Drive. This is Main Street, Elkhorn, just to kind of get you oriented. UP rail line along the south. One of the parcels is vacant currently. The other is occupied by a single-family home. The single-family house will be demolished, the site cleared and graded, and a pair of newly built 3-story mixed-use structures will be constructed. They are apartments on the upper 2 levels, 7 units in each building, and the main level of each building is commercial office space, square footage. While there's 7 residential units in each building will have one of those 7 units as a for-sale condominium unit. There is a 4th story that daylights on the south side of each of these buildings as garage access. There will be some parking within the building. It's primarily for those 2 for-sale condo units. The parking for the first floor commercial and for the rental apartments will be basically on the adjacent rights of way. The site is zoned NBD, Neighborhood Business District, so our zoning code does not require on-site parking for this project. The developer is a subsidiary of Choice Homes LLC, managed by Josh Erickson, Chad Bumstead, and Jason Gilman. The total project project cost is approximately $6.3 million, give or take a little bit. The TIF request is for $985,609 in TIF support. Project has been reviewed by the city TIF committee and approved. It complies with the TIF criteria. It's an appropriate land use for the location, complies with the city's master plan, and the planning department recommends approval.
Okay, thank you, Don. Are there any proponents that wish to come forward and speak?
Good afternoon, Michael Sands, 1700 Farnham Street, on behalf of the developer. Also in attendance are Jason Gilman of the development team and Doug Dreesen, who's the engineer from TD2. Don did a good job of outlining the project as usual, so I'll just hit on a few things. As far as the density and the size of the project, I just wanted to highlight that my client's been working with the city since I think the beginning of this year, and it was originally a two-story building per the city's request. They added a story and some design elements that went along with that to increase density, make it more mixed use, to further more of the goals that the city has for the area. As Don highlighted, we're asking for $985,000 in TIF, which is under 15% of the total project costs. I would highlight that the master plan outlines and sets forth the goals for mixed-use development, which this satisfies: more danceability, walkability, and continued growth and viability of the area, which we think this does a good job of doing. As far as parking goes, because I know there is discussion of that within the downtown Elkhorn area, and I think a few folks from the BID are here today. We intend to create approximately 26 on-street parking stalls, new stalls that would service these buildings and the surrounding area, in addition to the limited on-site on there. And we've been in contact with the BID. We have a meeting scheduled with them next week, so I just want to say that so you know that we'll continue to work with them. Obviously, it's not a city requirement, but we do want to be a good neighbor, a good business owner, and continue to work with them to make sure that we're fulfilling their needs for the area. With that, we're happy to answer any questions, either myself or my client.
Okay. Michael, we discussed this quite a bit upstairs in our pre-meeting. Just a couple questions. One, you have not met with the Elkhorn BID yet.
Correct. My client's been in contact with, I think, 3 individuals that are on their board and have an actual meeting with them scheduled next week.
Have you met with any of the residential neighbors?
I believe that they've made contact with some of the commercial neighbors. As far as residences,
across the street, there's some residential neighbors there.
Sure. I'd have to defer to my client. Yeah, he's giving me the thumbs up. They have. I know we talked about it, so it sounds like they have discussed it with at least the neighbors in the immediate area.
So it was a formal meeting, or just you've contacted some of those residents?
I don't know. I can pull my client up here to discuss that, but I personally don't know how that took place.
And then we talked at quite length about the improvements to 206th Street on the east side of your property between Elkhorn Landing and Elkhorn Station. What are you willing to participate in that project as far as funds?
Sure. So at the outset of this project, the city conveyed to my client and to us that 206th Street was being built out as part of a separate project. That was part of what attracted my client to undertake the project, and they were operating under that assumption until about 3 weeks ago. when it was brought to our attention that the developer that purported to undertake those improvements to 206th Street may be requesting additional assistance. I guess from our point of view, that would be outside the scope of TIF approval, only because it won't change the TIF number. We've maximized the TIF that we'd be eligible for. So we'll continue to talk to them, but at this time, from the outset of the project up until now, it had been limited to some kind of sidewalk, streetscaping, and possibly putting in some parking stalls in there.
I know my colleagues have probably got some additional questions, but the TIF can be, as Chris was stating in the pre-meeting, used for public improvements. And that parking that you would gain on 206th Street would be of great interest to you, I would think. And TIF could be used for that public improvement, your TIF.
I agree. However, we couldn't increase the amount of TIF. So while those costs would be TIF eligible, they wouldn't increase the amount that we would get from TIF as presented before you right now, because at the valuation that we've estimated, we couldn't ask for any more TIF. So in reality, it would be out of pocket.
Okay. From my perspective, I hope you reconsider that position. We need to figure out a way to share this with Elkhorn Station and Elkhorn Landing.
We'll continue to talk to them. The only thing I would add, and you know, I have been in contact with Don, and part of what Don requested, and I think what's in your report, is that we update the site plan to show, to take off 206th Street, because that's shown in the other project. And even with taking those stalls out, I believe we're able to put in 26 new stalls, and in addition to the ones that'll be on site. So, and what else I would add is that these buildings are going to be constructed in phases, not simultaneously. And they're going to start with the one furthest away from 206th Street. So, you know, I think from my client's perspective and from my perspective, they'd be able to build a successful project with or without 206th Street being built out. That was kind of conveyed to them as a bonus from the outset, that it would be built out as part of a separate project. And the fact that maybe, you know, somebody wants them to contribute to that was really kind of just placed on them 3 weeks ago, when this has been in the works for 11 months.
Can you show me where those 26?
Exactly.
Yeah, so, and this is preliminary.
You want that or no?
Well, so I have an updated one, and this is preliminary. I think we just got it today. So, like I said, we were asked to kind of amend the site plan to.
Can you move that up? I'm sorry.
Sorry.
Thank you.
There you go.
There we go. Okay. So you can see the line parking that's on Elkhorn Drive. Like I said, it is altered from the one that you have in your packet per the city's request. Instead of 90-degree angled parking, there's more of a 45-degree angled parking, along with providing space for the walking trail along Elkhorn Drive, and providing some parallel parking as well.
How far does it go to the east there? Just to the intersection. That is.
Right. So, yeah, I mean, so across, it looks about 4 stalls across 206th Street on each side. And then,
Michael, would you point to where you're,
Yeah.
where,
so are you asking,
What you're
I believe
referencing.
this is to the east,
yeah?
correct?
But
So-
those are already there, correct?
I think so, yep, they are. So the 26 are just contained on this block.
Quiet. Guys, please don't. I asked at the beginning that you not speak while seated. Wait your turn, and you'll have plenty of time to make any point you want to make, okay?
And I apologize if my numbers are off. I just briefly discussed this with the engineer, and he can maybe come up and correct me. Perhaps it's the 26 is including the on-site parking. But that's the representation of the newest site plan.
Your on-site parking would be the 4 parking spaces,
It's the
two in each building,
garage stalls.
the garage stalls.
And I'm not, were they increased to 2 on each building or still 1?
Well, there's 2 in that building that's shown. The other
Just a second, if you have to come out and give your name and address, please.
Members of the board, Douglas Streeson, 10836 Old Mill Road. What this diagram shows is a total of 24 stalls, the 2 included in the garage, and there are 24. There's some parallels on the south side of Elkhorn Drive, and then there's the remaining diagonals. It does not include the ones east of 206th Street that are existing. So that plan, as indicated, has 22 stalls on Elkhorn Drive with 2 in the garage and an undetermined amount for the eastern lot at this point.
So the city hasn't reviewed this yet, right? They haven't signed
I
off on
don't
this, right?
know. This is kind of the first time I've been
Okay.
in the process. I started with the dual building layout, and then the parking request came up recently. So we put that together with the second building somewhat in flux. I felt it was important to leave our options open on 206th Street. And we could show that you're getting essentially almost 2 stalls per unit with the western building and the improvements that are shown.
Doug, you said that the second building might be in flux, which means maybe it will be built, maybe it won't be, at least in my definition. Maybe it won't be. If it's not built, won't you have excess TIF funds?
That's a good question, Mike. Again, I haven't been involved other than the first part of it. I think the second building's intended to be built, but what we encountered in looking at twin buildings there is we were a little tight on space. So we think the second building will be modified slightly from the first one, and felt at this point it was important to show just the western building, which we know can be built as displayed. The eastern building will need a little bit of modification. I don't think a significant amount, Mike, and I think the intent is still to do both buildings.
Any additional questions for Doug? Okay, thank you. Any other proponents wishing to speak? Yeah, Michael.
I'll just grab my
Oh, okay, that's fine.
materials.
All right, are there any opponents wishing to speak? Okay, you can come on down and give your name and address, please.
Hello, my name is Tyler Kearns. I'm at 2610 North Main Street, and that's on Main Street in downtown Elkhorn. I have a business down there under the name of Main Street Studios that is at that same address, and as well as that, I'm also the president of our downtown Elkhorn's nonprofit organization. With all of that being said, some of the fears that we have for our area include an issue with parking. If you we're able to go through, I apologize, I'm getting my notes. We have 29 small businesses and organizations already in our community, which is a great boon for everyone in that downtown Elkhorn area. We have an awesome community. We have 90 stalls as of right now that are eligible for use throughout the public property. Obviously, with 29 small businesses, 5 of them being restaurants that have occupancies anywhere from 50 to 144, that is a large stress and a large amount of parking, especially in western Omaha, where we're not as dense as downtown Omaha and other locations. Blackstone, Benson come to mind. And so over the last few years, we have seen many clientele. Myself, personally, I have had probably once a month I hear from a client that they cannot find parking in downtown Elkhorn, and how much of a frustration that is. For a lot of people that come out there, they have, cars, and if there's, a restaurant with 144 occupancy, which is Juke's Ale Works, that's a lot of cars for 90 stalls. So I'm just trying to give you a brief overview of our whole area and really what our priorities in that area should be. On top of that, we have some other things that are going on. Obviously, with our area, in our community, we're trying to proactively go against this. Not this project as of right now, but we're proactively trying to establish more parking. On December 8th, we have a meeting with Ken Smith, who is the parking planner of Omaha, to help us go through and help us with signage as well as how to enforce parking situations for our employees, et cetera, throughout downtown Elkhorn. Obviously, having an occupancy of 144, these large businesses are staffed by a lot of people as well. So, that staff needs to be able to kind of go somewhere. But I just wanted to, again, show you that we're proactively as a committee trying to figure this situation out throughout downtown Elkhorn. Prior to this, this is all future planning that we're trying to take part in. What that does not help us with is the immediate future of downtown Elkhorn. As of now, we're looking at every day during lunchtime and during dinner time that all of these parking spots are completely taken up. We have clientele that try to come down to downtown Elkhorn, but at the same time do not have any viable parking, so they leave. And as I said before, every month or so I hear about another client who wanted to stop in, but just didn't want to give that effort because there was just nowhere to park in downtown Elkhorn. That being said, we have this project coming in, and it's concerning because the parking situation in Elkhorn is already, in my eyes, untenable as it stands. We can proactively try and accommodate these things, but from what we have seen of the drawings, it was the very first picture of just this 3-story building with 7 apartments in each one. And when we had asked for, more in-depth items, as in the outdoor areas of it, what was going to be situated where, as you saw in the drawings, all we have is a blank slate of concrete. In front of their building, there are already, I would say there's probably 5 or 6 parking spots that are already there in use. And with that being said, we look at a project like this, and it's very worrisome for a community that has, all of these mom and pop businesses that as of right now are going through COVID, have prior to that gone through the stresses of redoing our whole downtown area. I mean, we've just got brand new streets and brand new sidewalks, and it looks wonderful down there. But on top of that, that is a stressor for any small business in downtown Elkhorn. something else that I'd like to point out is that we have had other developers that have been in the area and the community. Don Gardner comes to mind for me personally, and his project is quite extensive for downtown Elkhorn. With that being said, he is doing a lot of things to help our downtown Elkhorn situation. He has 83 parking spots that are going on his personal land for, I believe, 60 apartments that'll be going in. He has 2 buildings with 3,000 square feet in each. And additionally, he's using his TIF fund to put in an additional 25 stalls as for 206th Street. So I guess my whole point with that being is that Don has come to BID meetings as well as the committee. He has been transparent with his plans. He has shown us what he is trying to do to help the community, and he has shown that he can be fair and can be worked with. We have talked with, or I have personally talked with Jason with this additional project that is going in, and from what my understanding of it is we have not had that communication, no formal meetings, and it's worrisome as a downtown Elkhorn community leader as well as someone who owns a business down there to see a plan and see a drawing and have none of the exterior layout, none of the apartments have any kind of parking, and to already know that we have this stress situation that could potentially have 14 additional apartments going in, as well as then I believe it's more than 10,000 square feet of retail, which could be an additional, each one of those locations could be 50 people per occupancy for a restaurant, or, I'm at that point in time taking a guess on how much of an occupancy you could get with 4 retail locations at around 2,700 square feet per. But in my reckoning of that, the 20-some parking spots that we would get out of their design, we had no, involvement in that. We didn't see them prior. And it's, that's a worry for everyone in downtown Elkhorn when you have all of this stuff coming in and you can't even have the proper channels to talk to someone and have a response that there is potential for new parking or that there is not enough room and we're not going to use our TIF funding for any of that stuff.
Tyler, I've got just a couple questions for
Yeah,
you. So
absolutely.
the 90 stalls that you were referring to,
Correct.
Along what street are those stalls?
So as our Elkhorn community, we have 205th Street, which would be just to the east of Main Street. And then we have Main Street. And then we have 206th Street, which we had just, it was probably 2 years ago, it had been completely redone and more parking had been established in there. And so the overall parking with those 3 streets comes to 90.
So this project, if they were to participate in the improvements of parking along 206th Street, how would that benefit the entire business district of Elkhorn? Obviously you're shortage of parking already, so it's just additional parking that would be added for people to use during normal hours. I guess that's the benefit, right?
Yep.
Is that what you'd like to see from this developer? Is to have them contribute to the improvements along 206th Street?
For us personally, Don is obviously going through, he has this BID, or I'm sorry, not BID, the TIF, and is going into that 206th Street, which if you were to have those in Don's area alone would get us up to 1.5 stalls per apartment for his area. Now he has, or I'm sorry, more than that. He has 83 on his personal property there, and then putting in 206th Street would add an additional 25. I haven't done math. It'd be over 1.5 stalls per apartment. For the future growth of downtown Elkhorn, our hope is to get something established where when we see a new development come in, they can at minimum supply, 1.5 stalls for their apartments. And obviously, as a community, we want to see growth down there. We want to see new businesses come in, but we want it to be growth in the right manner, because you don't want to hinder the businesses that are already there by adding more stress and more parking or less parking than there already is by adding, however many businesses or people come down for them. And just that additional stress can only hinder the businesses that are already there. So I know our BID is going through and, wanting to establish some forms of regulations on how to get more parking in downtown Elkhorn. And I obviously want everyone to know that we're proactively trying to do that. And, but if we have businesses, in the immediate future go in before we have anything established, it could be a huge detriment to, all of us down there.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Tyler. Tyler, before you go, let me just say, what you did to that old Elkhorn Oil building, good job.
Well,
Looks
thank
great.
you. And just for you guys, I actually purchased the old town hall down there as well, and I'm going through the historical motions as of right now. That's a fun one.
The old town hall, is that the McCardle, up by the McCardles? Is that where?
It would be on Corby Street.
Yeah.
So it'd be right behind Associated Engineering, if you know where that is. I'm sorry, to the east of it.
Oh, okay.
But it was built in 1904. Really neat old building, but it just needs some TLC, and I'm willing to give it to it.
Good. All right.
Anything else? Thank you.
Good. Any others wishing to speak in opposition? Okay. Tyler covered a lot of areas, so.
Okay,
Name
I'm
and
Brian
address.
Thompson, address 2714 North 206th Street. I'll be neighbors to this project, just 2 or 3 places away from me. Only thing I wanted to talk to you about is about the Elkhorn BID, and Tyler did go through a lot of this, but the correspondence which we had with them, they contacted us on Tuesday of last week and say, we're putting this project, Elkhorn Landing, in. And I said, well, great, we're excited for you. Can you send us the blueprints or email the blueprints of the project? He did that. After I sent it to all board members, that night, all of them contacted me saying, where's the parking? Where's the rest of it? All this is a apartment complex. So I emailed Jason the following day and requested that information, and we're still waiting. And so we're kind of, when we seen this is something new to us, but we had scheduled a meeting for next week on December 8th with him to discuss about the BID and his project. But what was left out is that was this was going up for vote here, and none of this was brought up to our attention except for the mayor's office contacting us and letting us know, hey, this is going to vote. We were unaware of that until the mayor's office contacted us. So that's where we are as the BID. We like working with our neighbors, our community, and this and that. We just kind of need, we work really hard in trying to make things good in Elkhorn, and we just need more transparency on this project and see what they're doing and what they're providing, and we don't have that yet. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Brian. Any other opponents?
Chairman Rosenbaum, members of the Omaha Planning Commission, my name is Jim Lang. I'm an attorney at 8526 F Street. I represent Peekadoo LLC. The principal in Peekadoo is Don Gardner, who's with us today. Peekadoo is the developer of the Elkhorn Station project, which is just to the east of the Elkhorn Landing project. We're not here today in opposition to this project. We're only here today to address the TIF and the cost share of 206th Street. If I could.
There you go.
There we go, right there. Okay. 206th Street is right here, and the improvement for 206th Street is going to consist of public storm sewer, paved street and public parking. The estimated cost for this is about $500,000. What we're asking is that both properties share because both properties benefit. There'll be approximately 25 parking stalls that'll be on 206th Street, about 17 on the east side and 8 on the west side, which will benefit both properties. Also, the access to the Elkhorn Landing property, as you can see, will be a paved access going to the rear of their property, so it's certainly a benefit to both projects. Now, I understand that both TIFs are a little tight here. The percent of the estimated project cost for Elkhorn Landing is about 16%. The estimated project cost of the TIF for Elkhorn Station is about 19.8%. Now, as we know on the TIFs, one of the priority for the TIF is to provide for public improvements. That's the main priority. So let's say they are at a max. I think you can always look at a TIF and try to push the TIF a little more because most of the time in the Omaha area, the TIFs pay off in about 12 years because of the increase in valuation in years 10, 12, and 15. So if you push the TIF valuation a little more, add a little more TIF in it, generally it's going to pay off in the latter part of the 15-year period because the city doesn't take into consideration the increase in valuation under their schedule. Once again, on the priority basis, though, you want to give priority to public improvements. Just about every TIF project, the eligible costs exceed the amount of eligible cost that you can get through the TIF. And especially in this project for Don Gardner, he's got the 206th Street improvements. He's got the railroad quiet zone improvements, which we're not asking for contribution from. So I think as far as Elkhorn Landing goes, we'd like to have them look at their TIF and on a priority basis, let's prioritize the public improvements first of 206th Street, which benefits both property and gives them access to their property with the paved street. So what we're asking for is that the Planning Commission here to make as a condition of approval as we go forward that Elkhorn Landing participate in a cost share with Elkhorn Station for 206th Street. We submitted a proposal where we would pay 2/3, they would pay 1/3 based upon the number of units. We believe that's reasonable, so we're requesting that the Planning Commission consider that as you go forward. Myself and Don are here for any questions. Appreciate your time today. If you have any questions from us, just let us know.
Jim, I do have a question for you. So I'm kind of agreeing with your chain of thought here a little bit, but I'm a little conflicted here. So how long ago did your project or Don's project start? How long ago was that project started?
We received our approval in 2019 for our redevelopment contract.
Okay.
So we probably started 2 years ago on this particular TIF project, maybe 3.
So I agree that it's sometimes it's good to be just a good neighbor and help as much as you can, and so that's why I kind of agree with your line there of where you're going. But what if this project never would have come online? I assume your client would have bared the cost or the cost of the entire improvements to that 206th Street. Is that correct, or am I not thinking correctly?
That is correct. That is correct.
So that's where I'm a little bit conflicted.
Right.
Is I understand, but you would have bore the cost of all of those public improvements had this not come online today.
That's correct. And there's been some other change in circumstances, is that my client's project on that west building's been reduced from 60 units to 30 units, which impacts our TIF, certainly our valuation in the TIF. And part of that impact, we lost the parking on the UP property, but the other part of the impact is Don working with the bid to provide additional parking on his property itself, just to the south of his west building that got cut back. So this building is being constructed right now. This is the west building. The west building extended to the south, created 60 units. That was shortened up and to 30 units. And as you can see on the south side, Don has then put the parking, additional parking on on this area which contain the 30 units. Now, under the existing zoning, he doesn't have to do that, as we've been explained. He wouldn't have to add the additional parking, but he has because the area needs the additional parking. Even though this zoning provides for 0 parking because it's a downtown business area, it's a lot different from the downtown business area in downtown Omaha where you have high rises and parking garages. You know, we don't have the benefit here of constructing a parking garage, the expense of a parking garage that could take care of this. So the bid is trying to address this parking issue, and Don is working with them on this. And this is one of the areas that he's worked with them on there to provide on-site parking on his property to address the overall benefit to the community.
And have you and Don, I assume you've reached out to the developers of Elkhorn Landing?
Yes, we
to try and
did.
discuss this?
Yes, we had a Zoom meeting about 2 weeks ago with Michael Sands and his clients. I thought it was a good meeting. Talked about staging, we talked about the cost share, and we have proposed the cost share to Elkhorn Landing as we have proposed today. I think they're considering it. I have not heard back from them. We're willing to work with them on this to make it work.
Okay, that's great. Thank you.
Any questions?
Any other questions for Jim? Jim?
I've got a question for Don, if he could come back up. Don Seaton.
Don Seaton, Omaha City Planning.
Hey, Don. The TIF project that we have in front of us, you know, now they've said that they may reduce the size of that second building, or there may be some changes. Does that have impact on this case and the amount of money and such that we would be approving? If they're not going to build what they show here, are we giving them more than what they should if they're reducing their cost? That makes sense?
We would have to speak with them a little bit more specific. Today's the first I've heard of a reduction or a change in the size or scope of the project or in a potential phasing. And if they want to build one building and then build the other building a little bit later, that's a possibility, and that would probably have very minimal impact on the amount of TIF. If they're changing the project to be just one building and reducing the size, we're going to need to take a pretty close look at the numbers, because obviously the ultimate taxable valuation is going to be different than what we have reviewed and gave you our recommendation based upon a certain set of criteria and specifics today. It'd be different. We need to look at it and see if we need to revisit the approval of the TIF and if the numbers still work. So.
Okay.
So it's a bit in flux, and like I say, it's the first I'd heard of any sort of change. And again, one question I would have for the applicants would be whether they're changing the scope of the project, want to change the scope of the project, or if they just want to phase it. And if they're going to phase it, how quickly does that second building come along? Because that can be a concern if it's too long.
Okay.
It gets a little complicated, but
yes,
we'd need to rerun the numbers.
Okay, thank you.
Kind of confirms that we're really not in a position to vote today on this.
Are there any other opponents wishing to come forward and speak?
Thank you, Board. Perry Veers with Boyd and Charlie's and Belvedere Restaurants in Elkhorn. I also live in Elkhorn. Just a couple thoughts. I don't want to take up a lot of time, but I thought maybe I could go down memory lane with some of you guys. I've known Greg a long time, but in 2003, we purchased the building down there to put a barbecue in. So we're the longest tenured business down there today. Greg can remember probably, we used to be so slow that we would have our employees park on the streets out in front of the restaurant just to make it look like we had some business. And Greg can also probably remember some of the challenges we faced when Elkhorn was annexed. A major meeting we had above Boyd and Charlie's with Greg and the old city manager of Elkhorn. We got a little sideways because the city manager thought that we were in support of the annexation, and we really were only in support of Elkhorn.
We got past it.
We got past it. So that's about 19 years ago. I'll fast forward just a little bit for you all. we do monthly P&Ls in our businesses, so we know pretty much what's happening with our sales and that kind of thing. Our parking problem did not start yesterday. It started 4, 5, 6 years ago. And we can look back at our lunches, Greg, as you used to come in a lot, and see that we were just packed wall to wall 4 or 5 years ago. But as new businesses came in and we welcomed the new businesses, we began to see the stress on parking. And as time has gone on, today, prior to COVID, we've probably seen in the vicinity of 15 to an 18% sales loss at our businesses. All the denominators are the same in the restaurants, who's running them, the way we run them. The big difference is the amount of traffic that's on the street. I can go out there today. If you all would go with me tomorrow at lunch, you would find there's not a single parking stall in downtown Elkhorn that a customer can park at. Our customers may come to us and say, well, Perry, we were going to stop yesterday at your restaurant, but we couldn't find a place to park, so we assumed you were packed. Only to find out that we may only have 2 or 3 or 4 tables in the restaurant. And so the consumer today has already started leaving us. Greg, all those old people that used to come in for lunch, we don't see them anymore.
You saying I'm an old guy or what?
All the old people except Greg. And so we know that this is a battle that we're facing. And if we don't get it curbed, if we don't get it fixed some way, I'm afraid that we're going to become an area that in some respects become blighted, because businesses aren't going to come back in down there when the ones go out that were there ahead of them if they can't find a way to get their customers parked. And that is an extremely big issue. So we are being proactive in looking for parking as we speak. In fact, our 2 restaurants has had to resort, effective next Monday, to having all of our staff go down and park in the city lot down at the Chamber building. And Greg knows the distance they're going to be walking, but it's a good quarter of a mile, no matter how you slice it. That's how one of the things we're doing to try to eliminate some pressure on the parking side of it. Now, when a new developer comes along, in which we're excited to have these guys come along, want to do business down there and get involved down there. But the problem is, these guys are wanting to put parking on public roads that we have already considered looking at that as trying to find a way to get that parking for what's existing already. We think that they should put parking on their property for their tenants and their residents that are going to be in their apartments. I think it only makes sense, because any parking they say they're adding is just parking that we've already gone down the road of looking at, trying to figure out how to get that incorporated into the parking that we already need. And I would say safely, we need 200 new stalls for downtown Elkhorn immediately, but we're in desperate need of them. And so, as Tyler said, every single one of those businesses down there is a mom and pop. And that mom and pop, in most cases, took a lot of what they had as a nest egg and invested it down there. And one of the little buildings is being sold right now, or is in the process of trying to get it sold. And the owner says to me, he says, Perry, this is my wife and my nest egg. We've been working for our whole life. And if we can't create some parking, and we can't partner with developers that want to put parking on their property, then the values of those properties are going to go down as well, when you can't get people to inhabit them to try to survive. So my appeal to you all is take a look at this thing hard, because we need to do something about the parking. We don't want to become what some of the other places in Omaha has become. We want to continue to retain the good businesses we have and continue to see the area grow, but we'd like to see some of these developers find a way to put their parking on their property and not use up public parking as it is today anyway. Thank you.
Thank you, Perry. Carl, did you want to say something? No, Perry handled it. He handled everything, okay. I'll just make a comment, and I started with the comment upstairs in the pre-meeting. Dave Rosacker and I were on the Elkhorn City Council, and that downtown Elkhorn was dead. Just nothing going on, and I remember Perry and Kevin Stork coming up to City Hall and wanting to put up a restaurant and another restaurant. Carl Anderson and his wife said, hey, let's put in a Scandinavian shop, and it just away things went. Unfortunately, you guys are suffering from your great productivity. I mean, your success down there. But it's what's always I've been impressed with in some of the meetings I've gone to with you guys is the community that works together and tries to figure out how we're going to go forward. Don comes in. Don doesn't need to supply anything. Don's doing everything he can to supply parking stalls and everything. That's why I mentioned to Michael Sands, I hope you get to be part of that community. Your client does and works together with the BID and come up with a plan to move forward. That's where I think your TIF money to throw in on 206th Street would go a long ways for everybody. Perry, you mentioned the parking down at the Chamber of Commerce down there. And I don't know, and you guys maybe have already thought of that, but there's a big parking lot down there. I don't know if some type of shuttle would help you guys out in the short term, if you'd have to check that out with the city of Omaha also with the use of that parking. But anyways, you guys have done a great job. Don, you've done a great job. And I hope the Elkhorn Landing people work with the Business Improvement District and do a great job with them and figure out a way to make this parking works for everybody. Any other opponents wishing to speak? Close the public hearing. Any additional comments or questions before I ask? Michael, did you want to come up? Okay, you can come up and add.
Michael Sands, 1700 Farnham Street, on behalf of the developer. I'll be very brief because we've already taken up a lot of your time. Just to clear up a couple of, I think, issues that were talked about. As for the phasing, it is stated in our TIF application that they would not be done contemporaneously, and one would be done after the other. So that's not a new representation. As far as saying that it was speculative, I think what he meant is that it's speculative in the sense that it's speculative that I get up in the morning tomorrow, but the plan is that I will, just like the plan is to build it out. However, being 2 years down the road to allow for construction of the first building we don't know the economic climate or other factors that could arise in the meantime, but by no means do we plan on not building it out. The plan is to build it out with the two buildings. I think what Doug meant was that we just might have to alter kind of the design of the building to fit the lot and not the scope of the project. As far as the parking, I certainly understand the downtown Elkhorn folks' position, but I would just submit that truly is a planning issue. It is NBD zoning, which obviously kind of creates these issues because there is not a requirement for on-site parking. So I think it's a bit unfair to hold my client to a standard that isn't in the city code. If that needs to change, I think it has to change at a city code level, in order to mandate and encourage development that requires on-site parking. Certainly, we're going to add as much as we can. The lots don't allow for any more, and we plan to add as much on-street parking as we can. But and we will certainly continue to work with those folks to get the best plan that we can. that's really the only things I wanted to add. I appreciate your time. Like I said, we've kept you here a long time, so I'm happy to answer any questions, but appreciate it.
That, just maybe a couple questions, additional questions for you, maybe Doug too as well. But you mentioned the MBD zoning, and you're absolutely right with regards to that. But this isn't like trying to build these buildings in the urban core. It's a completely different type of an environment. You're absolutely right with regards to the zoning with that. So that leads me to believe that you ought to make a commitment, you and your clients ought to make a commitment to improving the parking just to make sure that those businesses succeed. And if you're going to have some commercial in those buildings, the question I have, which maybe for Doug, is if you're going to have some commercial, you're going to want the additional parking yourself anyway, I would think, to make those businesses successful. Because I'm one of those people that if I drive into an area and I see there's no parking available somewhere, see ya, I'm gone. I don't have the patience to sit around and wait for a parking spot. So I think it would be to your benefit to talk to your client, to talk about cost sharing, to get that additional parking in there, and just make a commitment to make it work for everybody. That's to Greg's point, which is kind of the Elkhorn community. It's not the urban core of Omaha.
I appreciate it. We certainly are going to maximize the parking to the degree that we can. I agree it's not urban Omaha, but I think areas like Blackstone and Benson are facing very similar circumstances and situations, and yet they continue to grow. So I wouldn't say that it's a total outlier in the city of Omaha.
And I've mentioned the parking issues to most of the Blackstone projects that have come in our direction as well.
Yeah,
So,
perhaps I shouldn't have brought that up. But no, we certainly respect that, and we respect what Don's doing. The only thing I would say about that is that, like I said, from the outset, we were told that this was going to be built out. I think one of the fundamental tenets of TIF is that a project wouldn't occur but for the TIF. So to dump $200,000 or whatever in cost, I can, honestly say to you after conversations with my client after the meeting, is that could very well kill the project. And I know a lot of people say that, but that's real money that's not covered by TIF. Theirs is covered by TIF. They're not assigning us any of their TIF, so it's out-of-pocket expenses that were kind of dumped on us. So they're feeling a bit railroaded by it. They'll certainly continue the conversation, but I see their side of the equity argument. I think there's an equally bigger share or equally sizable part of the pie in that equity argument on our side as well.
you might look at it a different way, like I would look at it, which is, are you going to get a return on that investment? If you spend another $150,000 or $200,000 to improve the parking or help to improve the parking in there, will you be able to secure more tenants in that commercial space particularly? Because they're going to want to make sure that they're going to bring clients in there. And one of the ways they're going to do it is they need to make sure that, depending upon what type of client you bring in there, but they're going to want parking.
Sure. And I appreciate that, and we'll certainly continue to talk with those folks.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. Doug, did you want to add anything?
Yeah, I'd like to. I'm like you, Mike, and
Yeah, gotta have your name and address again, Doug.
Oh,
Sorry
Douglas
about that.
Dreesen, 10836 Old Mill Road, appearing on behalf of the applicant. As you guys have probably noticed on all those plans, our logo's on all of them. And we were involved in the work that went on down there over the last couple of years, which was a struggle. But I think, to Perry's point earlier, there's a lot of potential in that place, and really they're kind of a victim of their own success. Going back to looking at this and my clients, when they looked at this property, the other TIF project had already been approved. All of those parking stalls along 206th were there. So as I look at what's been proposed here, although the BID may have already been counting the stalls that were proposed to the west, they ain't there yet. There's some gravel and stuff there, and there's probably people like me that maybe take a few liberties with the parking rules once in a while when you're really hungry. Those are all going in as part of this project. That's their commitment to adding infrastructure to the project. They were led to believe all that other stuff was going to happen. In fact, the first look, I think if we go back to our first plan, it shows those 90-degree stalls on 206th Street being there already. The reason we're looking at the second building again is because when we looked at that and putting in city-required pedestrian ways, there simply isn't enough room to fit a twin building in there. So I want you to take that into consideration. I think moving forward with this project, don't forget, none of that stuff to the west was included in either of the TIF applications. That's where these guys intend to add to the community. To the point about trying to require on-site parking on something that small, that dense, I mean, you'd have 5 levels of parking garage underneath that thing, and they'd be small cars if you could even do it. I think these guys are willing to work with them, but I think their intent was, this is what we're going to have next door. We're going to add this and do what we can in front of us and to the west. That's really all I got to add. I think this has been this parking problem, frankly, surprised me when I first went out there probably 4 or 5 years ago. I couldn't believe it. But I got to know Perry and Kevin, and as you guys can tell, I like to visit restaurants quite often. And I would tell them, you know, I come out there, I really like to go, but I make 2 passes through there and I can't find a spot. It's like, I'm just going to go somewhere else. We got to find a way to get more parking down there. And I think we all thought the same thing. This could be a really cool spot in West Omaha, similar to Old Market, Blackstone, Midtown, Benson. There's really nothing similar to that out there, and there's a lot of potential. So that's really all I got to add. That not a lot of engineering there, but
Thanks, Doug.
thanks.
Thank you. Any other additional comments or questions from the board?
I just want to say, turn this other. I don't know what the right answer is, and I don't know that it's our role to mediate that. I think my concern right now is that I don't think it's, I don't know if mature is the right word, but the project and the TIF application and everything is mature enough for us to know what the right thing to do is. And I am concerned about the lack of a meeting so far with the BID, and I would like to see that take place and some of these issues worked out before we really know what we're approving. And I think it looks like a fantastic project. I hear the concerns about parking. I don't know if it's better to have them contribute on 206th Street or the street to the north. You know, I don't know that that's my role to figure out, but I do think that it needs to be a little bit more developed before we can vote on the TIF application.
Dave?
I'm a little bit the same way, Chris. You know, there's obviously been a lot of testimony here that demonstrates the need for a solution to the parking problem downtown. And I can see from the testimony that there is a lot of commitment to get that resolved. And Don in particular should be commended for the way he's approached that problem, because he's been ready, willing, able to step forward and do far more than what would be required for him to bring his projects into fruition. And that hasn't always been the case with some of the others that have come into town, I'm sure. But I think as a group, you need to solve this problem. Otherwise, as I think Perry was saying, that the decline will begin. And and I can sense that part of your resolution to try to solve this was to try to go up that street there and add more parking there. Well, now this project comes along and it actually has more demand than is even available at that point. So I don't know, I feel like, especially with the comments about the building as proposed not fitting, And yet we're trying to go for a TIF application on a building that hasn't been fully thought through yet as to what will really fit there. Is it two buildings with 2 stacks, or is it one building with 3 stacks, or is it only going to be one building with 2 stacks? That changes a lot of things. And it seems to me like that should be thought through before it's brought before us to make a final decision. The other thing I would just recommend is that the applicant would think very seriously about developing a strong relationship and a financial commitment to this area, because they obviously view it as an area where they can find success. And the TIF is a vehicle that's made available to developers so that they can make projects that might be marginal come forward. But I'm also involved with the business that I'm in with a lot of projects that have TIF involved. And I can tell you that I would say probably about 90% of them have more TIF eligible expenses than they have TIF granted or that they can afford. And so because that seems to be some threshold, I don't buy that argument. There is a point where the developer has, if they feel it has long-term success, they make the commitment. And I think that's something that needs to be demonstrated. It seems to me like the serious conversation amongst all of the stakeholders here has not taken place yet. And from that perspective, I would be inclined to hold this over.
Okay. Any other comments? Sydney, were you going to make a motion earlier on this, or did I cut you off? Oh, I'm sorry. Eric. Do we have to listen?
No, I suppose not. Yeah, I just wanted to make a few comments regarding MBD zoning. Yes, MBD zoning is one of the 2 districts in our zoning code that does not require on-site parking. That does not mean that it shouldn't be provided when projects come forward. To go back in the history, it came to be MBD zoning because when the city of Omaha annexed the city of Elkhorn, there was a zoning conversion to convert all of Elkhorn's zoning codes or classifications to, obviously you needed one zoning code, so to fit into Omaha zoning code. And how that was done is staff did a comparison of what the existing Elkhorn codes were and what they allowed and setbacks and lot size and parking and all those things, and converted it to the closest comparable Omaha district. In this case would have been MBD zoning. I don't know specifically what downtown Elkhorn had before as far as parking requirements, but that's the history of what happened with the conversion, and it came about, when that annexation was finalized. So I just wanted to comment on that. Yeah, I think staff does have some concerns, just being introduced to a new site plan here today at the meeting. I know that we had not seen that before today. So, with the potential for expanded parking along the north side of Elkhorn Drive, as you head west towards 207th Street, staff has not had a chance to look at that, both from a financial component regarding the TIF financing, or just let alone if parking there would be allowed. I don't know if that's blocking access to other sites on the north side of Elkhorn Drive. We just haven't had that chance to look at that. So due to those uncertainties, although the report says recommendation for layover, considering the concerns of the BID and the meeting and the adjacent property owner, I think we would strongly encourage, like the report says, for all 3 parties to come together. And we can continue to meet with all parties as well as the BID to explore all avenues potential with parking solutions. You had mentioned a meeting with Public Works, so that's a great first start. But if there's any tools and involve planning and Public Works both, we strongly encourage that. So that being said, I think with the uncertainties, staff is definitely acceptable to a potential layover.
Okay. Sydney, now, did I cut you off earlier?
No,
if
all
I did, I
good.
apologize. But
I move to lay over the case.
Second.
we have a motion and a second. Lisa, will you please record the vote?
Franklin?
Yes.
Carnes?
Yes.
Rosacker?
Yes.
Pate?
Yes.
Moore?
Yes.
Mr. Chair?
Yes.
Motion approved layover.
Moving on, agenda item number 4, case C12-20-232. Applicant Club Car Wash Operating LLC. Request preliminary and final plat approval of Stony Brook Place Lot 6 re-subdivision and minor plat inside city limits. This was laid over from our November meeting. Location 5620 South 144th Street. May we hear from the applicant, please?
Good evening, Board. My name's Kurt Daniels with Cochran Engineering, 8 East Main Street, Wentzville, Missouri, representing Club Car Wash. And just for the record, from the previous one, our parking is all on site. So, but what we are here to do is request a replat of this property, and what the replat is doing is removing a restrictive note that keeps this property from accessing onto a public roadway, which is U Street. And again, representing Club Car Wash. This plat was recorded back in 1990, and so what I did is I went back and looked at a little history of the property in the area. And as I can show you, this is the site. It's at the southwest corner of 144th Street and U Street. Taking you back to, this is the earliest photo we could find is 1999, so about 9 years earlier is when this plat was created. You can see it's a vacant ground. U Street's to your north, and then to your east is 144th Street. At that time, the access point that we'll show you in the next one was a full access point onto 144th Street. Right here you can see about approximately one of the photos we found where it did pop up is 2009 Super Savers there. The access point on the 144th at this point was a full access. Note restricts our proposed lot from accessing onto U Street. So somewhere in the neighborhood of around 2009, as we go back into Google, you can see in the middle here, if my cursor will follow, if you can follow there on the TVs, there was a divided median put in. And so at that time, this northern entrance of the site became a right-in, right-out due to the divided median. So as we came today, that's the reason we're asking for this restrictive note to be removed from this plat. And in doing so, this gives you a little bit of a site plan. Staff prior to the last meeting did ask us to meet with the residents. We did it via Zoom meeting. We sent out 25 letters to the north property owners. I think we had 3 in attendance who showed up on the Zoom meeting we discussed. Some of the concerns were, of course, as you're going to hear, I'm sure, is traffic onto U Street. The other one was, and I'm going to point right here, if you can see at our entrance, was concern of water accessing from a car wash onto U Street. So what our developer has instructed us to do, and we've moved forward with, is putting a trench drain there. So any water that would try to leave the site should be caught. It's right up adjacent to the right-of-way line here, so it should catch any excess water that's coming off a vehicle, so on and so forth. One of the other concerns were, how are the lights as we're coming out? If you haven't seen the site, you actually enter here on the western side. You come around, you enter the tunnel, and then you will exit on this side. These are free vacuum bays, which a majority of the people do use that, so we expect a substantial amount of the traffic to go and use the bays and then potentially access onto 144th Street there. At the corner right here, you can see there's an 8-foot site-proof fence. What we've done that for is to keep any headlights or anything like that extending past. We've also put a site-proof fence or a fence up along this west and also down to the east of it, which should limit with the 30-foot landscape buffer line for large trees, substantial plantings in doing that. This shows you just some of the landscaping that we would put in that area. The site's a very tough site to develop, and I could put my glasses on, but I think we're 30, 40 feet of fall from the west to the east. And as it's set there with full access on the 144th Street since when it was planted in 1990, there hasn't been a lot of people step up to develop it. Our client is willing to develop it. He's excited about the area and would like your favorable recommendation to remove this restrictive note from the plat. It's a Stony Brook Plat 6, Lot 6. And with that, that will end my slideshow. If there's any questions, I'd be glad to answer them, but as staff has recommended, and I did answer that. But staff has recommended that this be approved, and we would request and hope for your favorable recommendation also. If there's any questions, I'll be glad to answer them.
Thank you. Any other proponents wishing to speak?
My name's Justin Barnes, Club Car Wash, 1213 Old 63 North, Columbia, Missouri, and just here to represent the applicant to answer any questions if they do come up.
Okay. Thank you, Justin. Any other proponents? Seeing none, are there any opponents wishing to speak?
I'm Roger Sash. I live at 5521 South 146th Street. My house is on the corner of 146th Street and U Street with my driveway connected up to U Street. About 1990, as was mentioned, grocery store Super Saver / Hy-Vee at that time was looking to put a grocery store just immediately to the west of the lot in question. The developers were requesting access cut-throughs onto U Street at both 145th and also 146th Street. The residents of the Stony Brook area really were concerned about this, and we worked with the Omaha Planning Department to prevent those exits into our residential neighborhood. And in a letter dated September 25, 1990 from the Public Works Department stated that the Public Works Department would not support direct access to U Street from the development. This is contrary to our policy of separating commercial and residential land uses and the traffic that they generate. I believe Mr. Carter has provided you with a copy of that in the materials. Because of that, the planning department put a note on the plat which stated the lot was not allowed to direct vehicular traffic access to U Street. And I believe that's the note that the developers are trying to get removed. Issues from back then are still prevalent. In fact, they're even more extreme now. There's a lot more traffic on U Street. We've got the Millard Administration Building at the end of U Street. We've got kinder care, child care. And then we also have the rush hour traffic from students leaving Millard South parking lot when they get out of classes in the afternoon. All the houses along U Street do have garages that back up onto U Street. So to get out onto U Street, you have to back up. And this traffic really causes a problem as you're trying to back out of your garage area. However, my biggest disappointment in this whole thing is that the planning department has decided to not honor their promise they made to the Stony Brook residents to not allow commercial developments access to U Street. So those are my main concerns. There's other members of the community that would like to speak to you. So at that time, I'll turn it over to anyone else.
Thank you, Roger.
Yeah.
Any other opponents wishing to speak?
Good afternoon. My name is Ann Holmes. I live at 5423 South 147th Street. I've lived in the residence of Stony Brook for 33 years, and I'm a retired English teacher in the Elkhorn District. I recognize a couple of parents present today. Nice to see you again. Board members, thank you for the opportunity to speak to the board about the Club Car Wash, the commercial site, our Stony Brook division, and the plat currently in place. No one begrudges any business the opportunity to start in these economically challenging times. Businesses provide jobs. Club Car Wash will be car wash number 13, located within a 2-mile radius of 144th and U Street. Each one of the 12 existing car wash businesses in this area is currently open and in operation. Number 13, Club Car Wash, like the other 12 car washes, will be located in an area zoned for commercial use. Unlike the other 12 car washes within this 2-mile radius, Club Car Wash wishes to use a residential street for an entrance exit to the property. A search of Club Car Wash's website and a secondary search of its current in-operation locations in Kansas, Missouri, and Illinois show that none of those car washes is located next to or accessing a residential area. Therefore, I believe Club Car Wash can be successful in Omaha utilizing the existing street accesses and entrances. Between 144th and U Street and 144th and Stony Brook Boulevard, 2 right-hand turn lanes provide immediate access to entrances into the commercial development. At the north end, a 2-way traffic moves in and out. At the south end, 2 lanes bring traffic in, and another 2 lanes move traffic out of the area. Businesses already in operation at this development include a branch of the University of Nebraska Medical Center, the First National Bank of Omaha, and the Douglas County Treasurer's Office. Other businesses, the U-Haul Rental and Climate Control Storage, Farm Bureau Financial Services, Reliable Auto Repair, and Lena's Mexican Restaurant. Every single one of these businesses are accessed by the aforementioned 2 entrances, providing 6 lanes that move traffic in and out of the property. Club Car Wash could be just as successful as any one of these businesses that you probably readily recognize at this location by utilizing those same 6 lanes of entrance and exit. 145th and U Street is next to a residence, a 2-way street providing access east to 144th and west to 147th Street. 147th Street is also a 2-way street used by hundreds of drivers. Students who park in the sophomore lot of the Millard South High School, all of the employees at the Stroh Administration Building for Millard Public Schools, and anyone who seeks services at the district office, and finally the employees and families who work or are clients of KinderCare, childcare, and preschool. An entrance exit adding traffic traveling west on U Street to 147th will logically increase the number of vehicles on an already very busy street in our Stony Brook subdivision. Our subdivision is a small subdivision. We are 74 homes of families in a residential area. Resident elementary age students, tweens, and teens walk to Bryan Elementary, Anderson Middle School, and or Millard South High School on the sidewalks next to 145th, 146th, and 147th Street in our subdivision. Before the coronavirus, residents, both adults and children, walked to the CVS Pharmacy, Arby's, Boulder Creek Mini Golf, located just east of the intersection at 144th and U Street. Opening an entrance exit onto U Street literally, physically, connects all of the residents of our small subdivision to a large and increasingly busy commercial site with multiple businesses. Currently, the plat on the property prohibits creating an access onto U Street. If you look at if you will look at the application presented by the Club Car Wash, on page 4, in the first paragraph, it reads, based on the records from the Planning Board meeting on December 5th of 1990, when the preliminary plat of Stony Brook Place was first introduced, neighbors to the north of the original plat addressed their concerns of increased traffic along U Street and were in favor of a no access easement being placed on the entire U Street property of that plat. Since 1990, the number of businesses developed in the Stony Brook Place has quadrupled, thus increasing traffic, and even more people live in the area than lived there originally when platted. Board members, we have no data proving less traffic, nor do we have a rationale for the need to support removing the plat on Stony Brook Place. Club Car Wash will be number 13 such business in a 2-mile radius of 144th and U Street. Placing an entrance exit at 144th and U obliterates a safe line between a commercial development and a family-friendly subdivision. Please consider leaving that plat in place. I'll take any questions at this time.
Mrs. Holmes?
Yes.
Did you teach English?
I did.
I thought so.
James, Katie, Danny, yes. Emily, yes. I sat there in the seat thinking, oh my goodness, what were those names? I'm getting old and I forget.
Okay. Thank you.
You are welcome. Any questions, please? All right, thank you.
Any other opponents wishing to speak? And please bring us new information if you would, sir. We would appreciate it.
I'm Jim Rodas. I live 5435 South 145th Street. My property is directly north of the proposed property. It's a tough act I'll follow right there, and pretty much laid out everything. Our residential area has been established for over 50 years. And we've got along with the commercial property to the south so far. And I think I had tried to look through the plans that Club Car Wash presented, and it looks to me like they have 2 entrances and exits onto U Street. I'm not an engineer or...
I think that's an older plat, isn't it?
Is that correct?
The site plan that was submitted with the rezoning does show 2 access points on the north. The applicant did show a revised plan that consolidated that into one. Staff would not be supportive of the 2 access points. So the site plan doesn't specifically get approved if the note restriction is approved. So just wanted to point that out, that the actual site plan with the 2 access points doesn't necessarily mean that that's what would be built.
So it's down to 1 now? Is that what
Yes,
you're
I believe
saying?
the applicant showed a revised plan that had 1.
Yep.
Okay. I submitted multiple examples of Club Car Wash locations located throughout the Midwest that only had 1 entrance and exit point. The one I believe that they submitted has 1 on the south and 1 on the north side. And the ones I submitted to the city, Mr. Carter, I believe was his name. I don't know if he forwarded those to anybody.
Yep, got all of those, Jim.
Okay. So they do have 6 different, locations that only show 1 entrance and exit and how they've utilized that. So that I know it is something that's possible to do. As Ann said, there is a road to the south that accesses the shopping plaza up on the west side of the proposed property. And everybody else, for a number of years, have used that entrance and the exit over by First National Bank to adequately get in and out of that property. Talking about the wetness from the cars in the winter months, everybody that drives out of a car wash, and they talk about putting in an extra drain to catch the water flow. I'm not worried about that. I'm worried about the stuff that drips off the undercarriage of the cars and goes out onto the streets. So every time in the winter when it freezes, that's going to turn that street into a sheet of glass. And also, what happens when it snows 3 or 4 inches or a foot of snow? Where are they going to put all the snow that comes? Most people that plow commercial lots end up running the snow out into the street, and sometimes the parking lots aren't big enough to handle all the snow, so they come out into the streets and push it up the sides of the streets. So I don't know what their plans would be to do for the snow removal on that property also. And since everybody else talked about everything else, I don't think I have anything else to say.
All right. Thank you, Jim.
Thanks, Jim. Any
Any other
questions?
opponents wishing to speak?
My name is Beth Grinswick. My address is 5329 South 145th Street.
I'm sorry, what was your first name?
Beth.
Okay, thank
Beth,
you.
sorry. I'm not a public speaker, so I apologize in advance. I wanted to point out that when Super Saver and Kmart, for example, were in that parking in that commercial area, they succeeded just fine with the entrances that exist now. There's onto Stony Brook, there's one onto 144th, and I believe that's even before 144th Street was even a four-way or a two-way each direction. Traffic flowed just fine. Their demise was not because of traffic flow. There's other businesses now that have less traffic than what this car wash will add. Many of our homes already back up to 144th Street and to Q Street in our little subdivision. Lots of noise, lots of traffic. If you allow another entrance coming off to 145th and U onto 145th Street, the only way to go from U Street to 145th is up to 147th. It's kind of a horseshoe kind of area. From 147th, you either go to Stony Brook or you go to Q Street. That, both ways, there's no stoplights that direction. It's really difficult. It's dangerous. You add more cars that are trying to cut through 145th Street. You're just asking for a problem, whether it's because if there's a football game at night or school's getting out. If you allow them to cut through in front of our homes, it just seems like it's a dangerous situation that doesn't need to exist. It's already used as a cut-through traffic area. I understand and I accept progress. I think I speak for a couple of us up here. I did not receive a letter from anyone, so the 30 letters that went out, I have no idea. I've never seen a plan for this club car wash. It's because a neighbor stuck a piece of paper on my door and said, this is what's happening. I don't know any plans. I don't know how long this has been in progress. I don't even know how this system works. I just thank you for allowing us to be heard. In 1990, when it was decided that there would be no entrance onto U Street from that area, that was 30 years ago, and I don't see any reason for it to change. It's worked for 30 years so far. I know Hy-Vee at one time, I believe, was considering going into where Super Saver or where Nebraska Medicine is now. I'd also like to point out that the Hy-Vee that's on Stony Brook now has two entrances, and they survive just fine. I don't understand why a car wash, which is not necessarily a necessity, needs an additional unsafe entrance. With Hy-Vee, it's a necessity. They provide fuel, prescriptions for people, our groceries, that's a necessity. I'm sure the people that want to go to the car wash will find their way to the car wash regardless if it's on U Street or if they have access to where there's a stoplight. I don't think not having an access on U Street will prevent somebody to go wash their car. Thank you.
Thank you, Beth. Any other opponents wishing to speak? Seeing none, I'll close the public hearing. Additional comments, questions before I bring up Kurt? Kurt, did you want to come up?
Yes, thank you, Chairman. Kurt Daniels again with Cochran. Just to address a few of the comments, the letter that was written in 1990, again, that was 30 years ago, and I think staff, probably not to put staff, but summed it up better than I can. They said the proposed final plat is consistent with the connectivity principles the city has applied to subdivisions in the recent past, including access adjacent to residential uses. Furthermore, the 144th and U Street intersection is controlled intersection that will allow for more efficient traffic flow within the commercial plaza where the subject property is located. So 30 years that property sat there and has done nothing. Like I said, it's a tough development site due to the grade drop. There's going to be some significant retaining walls. It's set there for a reason. Hy-Vee and some of the other ones, Super Savers, that have survived, they've survived for a reason, but this one we believe has sat there vacant for all these years due to accessibility. And since the divided median on 144th, that just impacts it further. So I think some of the other ones that were, I'm trying to just look through the comments, and again, Kmart Super Saver has survived, they're still there, that is true. However, you have a vacant parcel that is still sitting here some 30 years later. Club Car Wash is willing to invest in that lot, but it is imperative for the success of this because the developer, and if you want to hear from him, he can speak. He knows his model. He knows what it takes for that car wash to succeed. And again, it's imperative access to U Street is acquired for this project. So, and on snow removal, I don't know, Justin, if you want to say anything. Snow removal, it would not be the intention, I'm sure, to push it onto U Street. That's never the intention of any developer. Either maintain within the site or push to approved locations within the development. But I'm sure Club Car Wash runs a very good wash area. They're impeccable about how they keep their site, and I can probably stand here and tell you that would not be their intentions, is to push it onto U Street by any stretch. So if there's any questions, I'd be glad to answer them.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Before I go to Eric. Why'd they call you Kevin? You know, I would love to see this this project go forward, but Roger spoke, and he spoke about that 1990 agreement. I can't remember the exact words he used, but it kind of hit me. I didn't like how it hit me. And I mean, it hit me not against what you said, Roger, in favor of what you said. It just kind of shook me a little bit about an agreement, and are we going to stick to an agreement? But anyways, anybody else have a comment before I go to Eric? Eric.
Okay. Yeah, so just to briefly touch on the process, obviously with the 1990 plat note restriction, in order to get that removed, you know, the subdivision has to come back before the planning board and city council, who ultimately has final decision on the matter. So Kurt mentioned that, you know, it was laid over last month. Staff, our requirements for notifications are different at planning board than they are at city council. So this request, without a rezoning within the city limits, did not require a notification of neighbors, but we did not want them to be, you know, blindsided at the city council stage, and so that is why we recommended layover to allow the neighborhood meeting, and obviously that is successful of bringing it to the attention of the neighbors and having constructive dialogue. So, you know, staff is recommending approval, and kind of for the mention that Kurt read from the report is this is a quarter-mile access point, the traffic signal there, and consistent with our connectivity principles. You know, I wasn't here in 1990. I mean, I was here in Omaha, but I wasn't working on planning board cases, so I can't speak for all the thoughts of that case. Of course, we, you know, looked through the minutes and the case file and whatnot, but so with that being said, unless you have any questions, staff is recommending approval of the preliminary plat subject to the 4 conditions in the report, approval of the final plat subject to those conditions of prelim plat approval, and prior to forwarding to city council for final action.
Thank you.
I just want to make a comment, and I know you all know what I'm going to say, and you're probably glad this is the last time you have to hear it.
Nope.
But I place a lot of importance on people being able to predict what's going to happen around their homes when they make that big investment. And I take it very seriously when we change the game on them. And I feel like that's what the request is here. And I have no doubt that it's a fantastic operation. I'm sure it would be successful. But I don't like to change the rules of the game after people have invested in it. And I've tried to be consistent with that throughout the last 5 years. So it would be a tough ask for me to change what's been noted on the plat. And I just want to explain why that is. I think it's a big investment for people, and I like them to have some predictability when they make that investment.
Thank you. At the beginning, when we recognized Chris, I talked about her fairness, and that's an example of her fairness. Do we have a motion?
I have a motion to deny the preliminary plat.
We have a motion and a second. Lisa, will you record the vote?
One second. You should,
And
are you going to include the final plat?
And the final
You should
plat.
group them together.
You're right, yeah.
Motion to deny the approval of the preliminary plat and the approval of the final plat, subject to the conditions before forwarding to City Council.
Denying both.
Denying both.
Yes.
Sorry.
Okay. Got a motion and a second. Lisa, will you please record the vote?
Carnes? Rosacker? Pate?
Yes.
Moore? Franklin? Mr. Chair?
Yes.
Motion approved.
I just want to point out for everyone in attendance, the request can still be forwarded to City Council for final action, but it's with the denial recommendation from the planning board. So I just wanted to point that out.
Thank you all for coming down. Appreciate it. Agenda item number 5, case C3-20-243. Applicant Planning Department on behalf of the City of Omaha. Request approval of the Leavenworth Point Commercial TIF redevelopment project plan. Location southwest of 31st and Leavenworth Street. And Don, you are presenting.
Yes, good afternoon again. Don Seaton, City Planning Department on behalf of the project. This project involves a comprehensive rehabilitation of 3 commercial buildings southwest of 31st and Leavenworth. This yellow rectangle here identifies the project boundaries. You see the 3 commercial buildings. There's also a single-family residential building on the project site. It's currently vacant. That's going to be demolished as part of the redevelopment of the site. And as I said, it's a comprehensive rehabilitation of the 3 existing buildings, all 90 years old or more. There's that single-family house in the background. None of them have official historic designation. This one, though, would probably be eligible and have a lot of very nice Art Deco detailing to it. The developer has coordinated with our urban design planners and also with Restoration Exchange Omaha. And it's treating this pretty much like a historic preservation project. It's proposed elevations. Zoom in a little bit here if I can. Show the treatment proposed for the buildings. Gall's Uniforms currently occupies the corner building, and they also use the building on the far west end for warehousing primarily. Gall's have been looking for a new facility where they can consolidate all their operations. Property is in the process of being replatted. Developers 3105 Leavenworth Street 2 LLC, managed by John Heine. Project investment, total project cost, a little more than $2.5 million. They're requesting $275,000 in TIF support. And I'd also like to take a moment to compliment the developer, applicant John Heine, on putting together a TIF application that was just thoroughly complete and detailed and well organized. One of the best applications in terms of format I've seen a long time. Very, very nicely done. But it appears to be a good project. It's been approved by the TIF committee. It's an appropriate land use for the area, complies with the city's master plan, and we recommend approval of the project.
Okay, thank you, Don. Thank you. Any other proponents wishing to speak?
Yes, John Heine. I live at 912 South 31st Street. I'm the applicant, and I'm here to answer any questions or concerns that you may have. And I will say thank you, Don, for the comment. I just followed the city's directions on the website. Bridget and Don made it easy to follow along. So here to answer questions.
Thank you. Any other proponents wishing to speak? Seeing none, are there any opponents? Seeing none, I'll close the public hearing. Any additional comments or questions? Eric?
Yeah, so of course, last month we saw the plat rezoning PUR and special use permit for this project. Staff recommends approval of this request.
Do we have a motion? We have a motion and a second. Lisa, will you record the vote, please?
Rosacker?
Yes.
Pate?
Yes.
Moore? Franklin? Carnes? Mr. Chair?
Yes.
Motion approved.
Agenda item number 6, this was on consent for layover. It's been removed. Case C10-20-245, C12-20-246. Applicant Steve Hannell requests preliminary and final plat approval of Andreessen Meadows Replat 2, a minor plat outside city limits with rezoning from DR to R4. Location 2218 North 179th Street. And is the applicant here? Okay, not here. Are there any proponents wishing to speak? Seeing none, are there any opponents? What, are you a proponent? Pro? Okay, come on down, sir.
Good afternoon. My name is Christian Kloster. I live at 2749 North HWS Cleveland. And I am representing a proponent of the request for the layover. As I understand it, well, let me back up. I'm with the developer that developed this subdivision, and the applicant buys lots from us to build houses. So that's my relationship with the parties. We are a proponent of laying over because I understand on Monday a few of the residents sent some communication to the city, and so we'd like to meet with the homeowners and reach out and see if there's a way we can kind of work through some of their concerns offline, not in front of the board here. So, any questions?
I don't think so. Thank you.
Yep.
Any other proponents wishing to speak? Seeing none, are there any opponents? Sir, you can come down now.
Thank you. I'm Jim Leary, the owner of the residence at 2214 North 179th Street. That's lot 151 in Andreessen Meadows, immediately adjacent to the south of the outlot A that's in question. I am also the acting president of the Andreessen Meadows Homeowners Association. I believe that outlot A should not be used for a residential structure at all. The outlot should be allowed to revert to its original purpose as a site for drainage easements and green space for Andreessen Meadows neighborhood. I am already on record before this board opposing the rezoning, and that I refer to a letter on July 27th, 2014. I originally wanted to purchase this lot myself to build my house in 2013, but was told by my builder that I could not buy it because of the sewer easements that made it too narrow to construct a house that fit with the other homes being built in Andreessen Meadows. In fact, I had to relinquish 5 feet of lot 151 to accommodate the storm sewer easement on the north side of my lot. This caused me to completely re-engineer my house by rotating it 180 degrees so that the 3-car garage and driveway would fit. These conditions have not changed. According to the covenants, this lot was not intended to be sold. Instead, it was intended to be owned and maintained by the HOA, as are all the other outlots in Andreessen Meadows. The current owner, Mr. Hannell, has never maintained outlot A, and it has become an eyesore. Twice each year, I have had to call the county weed control to have the lot mowed. If the lot were returned to the HOA, as it was originally planned, the HOA would maintain it and it would be used as a common green space for the neighborhood to enjoy. Another major benefit of having Outlot A remain as it was intended is access to the sewer easements and the large retention pond, excuse me, that is located, I don't know if I can do this, but anyway, see it. But anyway, excuse me, the large,
Jim?
yes, I'm sorry.
If you've got an exhibit, you can put it up there now. He's got there you go.
Oh, okay, yeah. Good. Okay, thank you. Another major benefit of having Outlot A remain as it was intended is access to the sewer easements and this large retention pond that is excuse me, located behind outlots or behind lots 151, my lot 150 and 149. This pond does not show on any of your plot plans that I've seen, but it is essential to help control the water runoff and keep the creek bank behind it stabilized. Maintenance of these structures takes place frequently. In fact, just last year we had people in to clean out that retention pond. And it often involves the use of heavy construction equipment, which would have to find another way to access these easements without damaging a homeowner's property if a house were to be built on that lot. In conclusion, then, I therefore request that the planning board not rezone Outlot A, but allow it to come under the maintenance of the HOA as was originally designed in the covenants. Thanks, appreciate it. Oh, incidentally, this is that large retention pond, and you can see how large and how extensive it is. It doesn't show on any of your plot plans, so it's something that you really have to take into consideration. The lot right next to it there is Outlot A. You can't see that, but it would be towards the north there, and
put your finger on what's the north. On that
well, the
picture,
north would be. Well, I don't know if you can see it. I don't know how to show that.
We're looking from the north.
I'm looking from the north
Gotcha.
to the south here
All
on
right,
this
gotcha.
photo.
All right.
So behind me is the outlet we're talking about.
Okay.
Question, and there is a sewer.
I gotcha.
There's a sewer manhole and sewer outlet right where I'm standing.
I have a question, if I may.
Sure.
Is it Jim?
Yes.
In 2013, did you or your developer contact the city with your plans to build on this site, or your desire to have the space rezoned to build a home?
Well, we did not. I did not contact the city with regard to this. This subdivision is outside the city. It's in the county, and so I relied on my builder and the plot plan and the developer to indicate that these easements were going to be on that lot. And as a matter of fact, at the same time I was building my lot, those sewer easements were being installed at that same time. So I witnessed them actually being installed. The one on the north side of my house is a storm sewer easement. On the other side of that lot is a sanitary sewer easement, and then along the back is the sanitary sewer easement that connects all of the houses along that creek.
Okay, thank you. And another quick question. So the HOA is interested in purchasing this lot from the current owner?
We're not. That's kind of a hard question to answer from the standpoint that, according to the covenants, and I can quote from them if you like, but according to the covenants, that particular lot was never supposed to be sold to anybody. It was an outlot which was supposed, once the developer was finished with his involvement, it was to revert to the homeowners association when it was established, which it was. And we have, along that bottom creek, if you're looking at that picture, along towards the tree line there that you see, that's called Outlot B. And the HOA maintains that. And it runs all the way along the back of the development along the creek bank. So we maintain all of that, and we'd be glad to maintain Outlot A if we were able to manage it. So,
Okay. Thank you, Jim.
any other questions that can answer?
Jim, I think what Christian had said was they had pulled this case and put it on for layover so that there could be more discussion between you and the rest of the HOA and the neighborhood and see if they can resolve all this. And so I think that you've got their attention, and I think, and I appreciate you coming down here and presenting your case, but they pulled that so that they could take some time to talk with you, and it looks like that's what's going to happen moving forward. So
That was a development that I was informed of just this afternoon as I'm sitting here.
I agree, yeah.
So that's the reason why I still wanted to make my presentation. I would like to submit this photo as well as other documentation if I could.
Sure. You can
Sure.
give it to Eric.
Thank you, Jim.
Thanks for coming down, Jim.
Oh, you bet.
Christian, do you need any time to, okay, all right. Any additional comments or questions from the board? Eric, did you want to add anything?
No, staff, we recognize the applicant's request for a layover, and we're acceptable to that, and hope there's continued conversations and coordination.
Okay.
No, so this was a regular platted lot. I believe the final plat was approved by City Council in 2012. What I'm a little unsure of, and as I sit here today, and what I would probably want to look into was that originally the outlaw supposed to be SID owned, HOA owned. So, Jim is saying, he sounds like he's pretty familiar with the covenants and what that language said, but we'll go back during the layover period and continue to look at the subdivision agreement, and perhaps other staff or Public Works knows, and I just don't know the answer as I sit here. But no, this was regular platted lot. This outlot, the purpose was for sewer lines and sewer easements. And in your recommendation report, as I mentioned in the pre-meeting, there was a condition of recommendation to coordinate with Public Works on the required dimensions of the new sewer easement. So as those sewer lines get deeper, there's a need for a larger easement potentially. So there's still continued coordination that the applicant is going to have with Public Works during this layover as well. So it's probably good on multiple fronts for the layover.
Okay. That it?
Yeah, we support the layover.
Do we have a motion? We have a motion and a second. Lisa, will you please record the vote?
Pate?
Yes.
Moore? Yes. Franklin? Carnes? Yes. Rosacker? Yes. Mr. Chair?
Yes.
Motion approved, layover.
Okay, final case is agenda item number 9, case C10-20-251, C10-20-252, C12-20-253, applicant Jeffrey Silver. It is a request as preliminary plat approval of Heartwood Residences, a subdivision outside city limits with rezoning from R4 to R5, along with approval of the NCE overlay district. Location, northwest of Pacific Street and Applied Parkway. May we hear from the applicant, please?
Yes, Joe Flaxbeard with Lamper Nearson, 14710 West Dodge Road. On behalf of the applicant, I see the crowd's a little thin here, so I'll keep my comments at the beginning brief here. We're here to talk about the Heartwood Residences. This is a traditional neighborhood development. Some may call it a new urban development, single-family housing development. It's part of the greater Heartwood Preserve development. Consistent with what the master plan's always shown here. We've just got the plan developed enough to the point with the applicant where we're able to put this in front of the city, work with planning department on the R5 zoning and the NCE overlay district and the zoning requirements there. So we're here before you with preliminary plat and the approval of the zoning with the NCE overlay, and I'm just here to answer any questions.
Okay, thank you, Joe. Any other proponents wishing to speak?
Bart Emanuel with Applied Underwriters and Heartwood Preserve. It's good to see you all again. Thanks for letting us be last. I just want to say that to Joe's point, that this is right along the line of the master plan originally, and we've put a lot of work and effort into this. And the thing that I'm excited about is it lines up exactly with what Omaha's vision was a number of years back when they rewrote the code a little bit to get a neighborhood like this into a development similar to this. And so we're really excited, that we think we've hit it right on the mark here. And so if there's anybody has any questions, feel free to ask.
How many total lots do we have in this?
235.
Yeah, 235 lots. Yep.
235.
And 12 outlots.
Yes.
Okay. Any other proponents? Seeing none, are there any opponents? Seeing none, I'll close the public hearing. Additional comments, questions from the board? Eric / Kevin.
Yeah. Not all projects are kept off the consent because of believed opposition or something. This is just one of them that, I think sometimes it's worth talking about in the public setting. So we're excited about this project. We've met with the development team multiple times and their vision for this project and, working through the NCE plan, which is modifying several zoning regulations and provide a unique neighborhood. It seems to have gone better than last month at Coventry that we attempted to do that. So I'm glad it's, not the opposition because it is a good project. So just some finalization of some of the items at the NCE plan that we'll continue to work with them. That'll accompany the final plat down to City Council. Otherwise, I discussed a lot of the details in the pre-meeting, so I don't need to get into those unless you have specific questions. So I will recommend approval of the rezoning from R4 to R5, approval of the NCE plan subject to submittal of an acceptable NCE plan document prior to forwarding this request to City Council, and approval of the preliminary plat subject to the 19 conditions in the recommendation report.
Do we have a motion?
R5, approval of NC Neighborhood Conservation Enhancement Plan, subject to submittal of an acceptable NCE plan document prior to forwarding to council. The approval of preliminary plat subject to the 19 items noted in the report.
We have a motion and a second. Lisa, will you please record the vote?
Moore? Yes. Franklin? Yes. Carnes? Yes. Rosacker?
Yes.
Pate?
Yes.
Mr. Chair?
Yes.
Motion approved.
Thank you.
Do we have a motion for the pre-meeting minutes from November?
Motion approved.
Second. We have a motion and a second. Lisa, will you record the vote?
Franklin? Let me go abstain if I wasn't here.
Yes.
Carnes? Abstain. Rosacker?
Yes.
Pate?
Yes.
Moore?
Yes.
Mr. Chair?
Yes.
Barely.
Motion approved.
Do we have a motion on the public hearing meetings, minutes from November?
Move to approve the minutes from November 4th meeting.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Lisa, will you record the vote?
Carnes? Abstain. Rosacker?
Yes.
Pate?
Yes.
Moore? Yes. Franklin? Mr. Chair?
Yes.
Motion approved.
Chris?
I would love to move to adjourn. Because I'll be sad to leave.
Do we have a motion and a second? Lisa, will you record the vote?
Carnes?
Yes.
Rosacker?
Yes.
Pate?
Yes.
Moore?
Yes.
Franklin? Yes. Mr. Chair?
Yes.
Motion to approve, to adjourn 2:30.
It's been a pleasure.
I'm gonna miss you, Chris.
9, sorry.
We'll have to find another place to serve.
Oh, man.